Bring in former US diplomat Nabeel Khoury. Nabeel, thank you so much for your time. What do you make of this sudden withdrawal of troops from the south of Gaza? Has this any indication in terms of the international pressure that's been on Netanyahu, or just a one step in this military operation that Israel's been working towards?
It seems that this withdrawal from one major city is tactical, is related to a feeling in Israel that goals were achieved in that city. Overall, there is no withdrawal. So I wouldn't count on this being a step towards some kind of resolution. There's been a lot of movement back and fro with the negotiations. And I don't think we're at the point right now where we can say they've reached an agreement.
So mediators, of course, have resumed ceasefire talks in Cairo with Qatar's Prime Minister and the CIA chief in attendance. But it's unclear if any high-level Israeli officials are participating. Hamas wanted a non-negotiable ceasefire to be in place before talks began. What is the feeling about these talks? How far can they get?
Well, you were correct to use the word high level, and decision-making has been highly centralized, essentially, in the Prime Minister Netanyahu and a couple of extremists, right-wing extremists in his cabinet, Ben-Gvir and Smotrich. Other than that, the people who are actually negotiating don't have ultimate decision-making powers. Also, when you look at the positions overall, both in Washington and in Tel Aviv, we're still talking about a humanitarian ceasefire, even though the language in Washington has changed, the tone has gotten harsher with Netanyahu. But when you read the fine print, what really upset the Biden administration was the attack on the aid convoy, the World Kitchen aid officers there, officials on the ground. In Secretary Blinken's statement, he says this attack on aid workers must be the last one. In other words, please don't attack aid workers as they're delivering food. He also said there must be an improvement in the overall humanitarian situation. These are very vague terms. And even though he's calling for an immediate ceasefire, it's not an overall ceasefire. It's not a final ceasefire. So I'm afraid we're still talking about the deal that was in their minds at the origin of these talks in Cairo and then Doha. Essentially a temporary pause, allowing more food and humanitarian assistance to go in to Gaza. But beyond that, there is no agreement on the final status of Israeli troops, the final status of Gaza. I think any ceasefire, if they really have a ceasefire that's well implemented,
Yep.
Will save lives, no doubt. But medium-term and long-term effects are still uncertain.
Yeah, just briefly, attacks have been stepped up on the border of Lebanon by Hezbollah. The Houthis have also stepped up attacks too. There has been some counter-attacking from the US. What risk are we at in terms of seeing a wider regional war at this stage?
Well, both in Yemen and in Lebanon, the members of the Axis of Resistance there have tied their engaging the Israelis to what happens in Gaza. They're not involved in a war for themselves, as it were. They're fighting on behalf of the Palestinians. I don't think those two fronts will grow into a region-wide war. However, the Israeli attack on the consulate, the Iranian consulate in Damascus, that is potentially a trigger for a wider war. It depends whether Iran is serious about retaliating or not. I think Iran very much wants to retaliate, but they're afraid that if they do, it would be the thing that would trigger a massive attack on Iran itself.
All right, we'll have to leave it there. Really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Sure.